What's up everybody, Adrian here. I haven't made a video in a very long time, but an article came out talking about Ridley Scott wanting to make more Alien movies, sequels and prequels or whatever, so I just had to talk about it. So let's get right into this article. Starts off by saying, in the wake of director Ridley Scott's Alien Covenant, there was some questions about where the franchise would head next. The merger between Fox and Disney certainly didn't do anything to clear the air around the rumors that follows up to the series, at the worst, totally canceled. But that hasn't stopped Scott from branching out with ideas for further prequels, as he's still keen to tell the story of the derelict found on LV-426. So he's quoted in the article saying, "I still think there's a lot of mileage in Alien, but I think you'll have to now re-evolve," whatever that means. What I always thought when I was making it, the first one, why would a creature like this be made, and why was it traveling in what I always thought was kind of a warcraft, which was carrying a cargo of these eggs? What was the purpose of the vehicle, and what was the purpose of the eggs? That's the thing to question. Who, why, and for what purpose is the next idea, I think. So let me just continue the article. On one respect, Ridley Scott remarks are totally on board with what's been hinted at the film following Alien Covenant, with previous reports stating that a script entitled Alien Awakening would bring the story of Michael Fassbender, David, and the engineer that survived his attempt to exterminate their species at LV-426 bleak landscape. All of those questions would essentially be answered in great detail. I'm still waiting for the new questions that he, created to be answered. He never answered the questions from Prometheus, and then he just added more questions than answers in Alien Covenant, so now he wants to add more questions. Anyways, the article finishes up saying, however, that's a bit of a catch when it comes to the potential Alien prequel, moving the series that is much closer to the events of the first film featuring Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley would go against Ridley Scott's previous claim that we're roughly 2 films out from connecting the franchise, past and future, into a cohesive whole. Well, that went out the window, because I'm assuming he just wants to make more money and make more and more movies. So by the time you end up connecting the films, it's going to be like Alien 24, like the Rocky series or something. So it's not that an adventure on LV-426 would be unwelcome, but this line of thought does not have us wondering if 2 films centered in the particular spot in the galaxy is wise. What's comforting either way is that Ridley Scott is still thinking about the franchise. That's not comforting at all. I wish he'd forget about it. There's definitely a debate that rages over how Prometheus and Alien Covenant fit into the overall Alien anthology, but what's not up for discussion is the fact that Disney owns the Alien series outright, and Ridley Scott is still interested in being involved, unfortunately. All that needs to be figured out is whether or not the studio will let Scott stay with the xenomorph-laden baby, and if the wild direction he wants to go down will be approved by those in charge. Well, didn't they give him carte blanche to do anything he wanted? I mean, he's, the iconic Ridley Scott, quote unquote. He could do whatever he wants. He has first and last say. I didn't hear anything about the studios being involved in his creativity of Prometheus or Alien Covenant. So all of a sudden now he's worried about the studios telling him what direction he needs to go down. In his quote that he said here, that he wants to explore his ideas of the eggs and the xenomorphs, where they came from. Wasn't he supposed to do that in Prometheus? He had his chance. He blew it. he got all in his head. And then he said, let's take it in a different direction with religion and psychology and the meaning of life. And, they didn't have any xenomorphs in it, which was fine. Most of the fans didn't like that, but I was okay with it. But the whole religious aspect and, where did we come from? He went in that direction instead of going in his original direction, whatever that would have been. And he focused more on the android, David and all that. So, but he had this chance because, everyone wanted to know in Aliens 1 about the space jockey and in that room with that big, mummified, elephant-looking creature. What was that? And what was the ship all about? That's the answers we wanted. And we thought we were going to get that in Prometheus, and Ridley Scott didn't do that. So now that he wants to go back and answer those questions, it's too late. And then they thought, okay, well, let's do Alien Covenant, and this time he's going to listen to the fans, and we're going to put xenomorphs in it. And again, he didn't answer any of the questions. He gave us more questions that we didn't want, and he didn't even answer those. After Alien, James Cameron was the one that did the sequel, Aliens, and that reinvigorated the franchise. He introduced new characters like, Hicks and Newt, and he continued the story with Ripley, and he made her all badass and all that, and you had the Queen Alien, and it was just one of my favorite films. I'm sure it's a lot of people's favorite films, but it was James Cameron that reinvigorated the franchise, and I could tell that throughout the years Ridley Scott didn't like that, because whenever they talk to Ridley Scott about Alien, they give him his props, but then they quickly shift the talk to Aliens. But you could tell at that moment in interviews that he doesn't really want to talk about it, because he knows people care more about Aliens, and I think it's a much better film. And, they want to talk about James Cameron, and of course, Ridley Scott didn't have too much input in the sequel to that, if any. It was all James Cameron. So Ridley Scott doesn't really like talking about it too much, because he wants all the focus and attention on him. So let's take a look at Alien. So this was his real first big blockbuster movie, and it was a horror movie in space with xenomorphs. Everything that has been said about Alien has been said, so there's nothing more to say. After this film, he blew up. So then right after that, he did Blade Runner. So Blade Runner was this film noir, science fiction, replicant type movie. So when Blade Runner first came out, it was a flop. People didn't really get it. They said it was slow, boring. But over the years, the movie has been divided into two camps. One camp of people saying that it is the greatest science fiction movie of all time. It is godly, and you can't say anything wrong about it. It's a perfect film. And in the other camp that says it's an okay film, I appreciate it, but it's not the greatest science fiction film. It's not even the greatest film of all time. It's kind of slow, kind of boring. Me, I really like the film, but I don't think it's the greatest of all time. So, if you hate me in the comments about it, oh well. So after that, he did his next film, Legend. Now, to be honest, I love this film, and it's not even that great of a film. It's this fantasy type film with Tom Cruise before he was famous, and there's a princess with Mia Sara, and they have to fight the devil, which is darkness, and all these goblins, and there's a bunch of versions of it that came out later, but I absolutely love this film, and if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. He did Thelma and Louise, This was a really good film with Brad Pitt in it, Gina Davis, and Susan Sarandon, classic film. Then he did White Squall. If you haven't seen White Squall, you should definitely check it out. It's about a group of students going on this sailboat and a storm hitting. It's really good. He had G.I. Jane with Demi Moore as a soldier. It was okay. Then you had Gladiator, which was his big blockbuster epic film. Russell Crowe, great film, but again, he didn't write it, he directed it. The thing with Ridley Scott is, if you give him a good screenplay writer and he doesn't force himself onto the story and he doesn't put his input and ideas and change the direction of the original screenplay, you get fantastic films because he's a great visual director. Every film, good or bad, he always seems to direct it beautifully with shots, angles, all that. Then he did Hannibal, a sequel to Silence of the Lambs. It was okay. Black Hawk Down, a great military film. Definitely check it out. Matchstick Men. I think I've seen it once, but I don't really remember too much about it. But I heard it was really good. Kingdom of Heaven. I absolutely love this film. It's kind of like Gladiator, another medieval type epic grand scale. But it wasn't quite as big as Gladiator. It tried to be. But I still love this film. You had Liam Neeson and Orlando Bloom. Definitely check out this film. It's about the Crusades. Then he did American Gangster. Very good film with Denzel Washington and Russell Crowe. It's definitely a must-see gangster flick. Body of Lies. I did see this. I remember it being like 50-50, so I don't know if you liked it or not, but it really wasn't that memorable. So then he did Robin Hood. Again, he tried to do a big, grand scale, epic film like Gladiator and Kingdom of Heaven, but it just didn't quite work. It was okay. It was supposed to be technically a prequel to show how Robin Hood became Robin Hood, but it just didn't work. Then he did Prometheus, which again people were split on. I liked it that they didn't have xenomorphs and it went in a completely new direction. They built up characters David and Shaw, but then in the sequel they killed Shaw off, which was dumb because she was like one of the most interesting characters with David. They expanded on David in the sequel to that, but we'll get to that. So then he did The Counselor, which I didn't like at all. Some drug cartel story going on with Michael Fassbender. So if you've seen it, let me know if you liked it, but I didn't like it. Then he did Exodus, Gods and Kings. I heard it was really bad. Then he did The Martian. He just directed The Martian. The screenplay wasn't his. He didn't have much input. And when he just directed it, it was very beautiful style film, and believe it or not, he won an Oscar for Best Comedy. Which I know what you're thinking, like, wait a minute, it's not really a comedy, there are some funny moments. Now we get to Alien Covenant. So people were complaining, you didn't have enough xenomorphs, you didn't have any xenomorphs in Prometheus. So this time, he listened to the fans and he put a lot of xenomorphs. But again, the problem was he had a lot of input on the screenplay. So the movie had horrible, cartoonish characters where they would do stupid, ridiculous things where it was like comical on screen how dumb they were. Like there was this one scene where one guy was showing another guy the xenomorph egg and he's like, yeah, look in the egg, and then the egg starts to open and you can see like the face hugger starting to come out, and then the guy's like, yeah, stick your face in it, get a closer look, and he does, and then the face hugger comes out and kills him. I mean, come on. That's like some slapstick, like Three Stooges type thing. And then you had like Juicy Smollett in it, and you had like this, super diverse cast and forced diversity, and SJW had like the main character being like a rip-off of Ripley, but with much shorter hair, that to show how strong and independent, and she didn't need a man. And with Alien Covenant, he presented more questions instead of answering the ones he already had, and it was just a big cluster of all this crazy stuff going on, and people left the theater disappointed and more confused and more questions to answer. You had Neil Blomkamp, this young up-and-coming director, show up, and he showed interest in making a sequel to Aliens. So he put out a lot of concept art, and when he did that, the internet blew up. And as you can see here, some of the concept art, it got the fans re-energized, more excited, because he was going to continue the story with Ripley and Hicks and Newt. You have badass Sigourney Weaver. Look at this, with a bomb strapped around, and you had Hicks with this like deformed face from the acid blood of the xenomorphs, like, going to kick ass. Like, look, the Queen was gonna come back. And look at this picture. You had the xenomorphs, I guess, working now on the good side with Weyland-Yutani, with like these contraptions on their face. And I'm assuming right here, this is Newt. No, this is Newt right here, and this is supposed to be Sigourney Weaver or one of the soldiers. Look how badass that looks. That's what everybody wanted to see. Look at this picture right here. You have Sigourney Weaver in some type of xenomorph suit. I mean, that's crazy. Like, I'm excited just looking at this picture again. So when Ridley Scott got wind that this new up-and-coming director, Neil Blomkamp, showed interest in wanting to do some sequels, or do a sequel to Aliens, that's when Ridley Scott got upset, and he was like, who is this young up-and-coming, this young punk trying to make a name off of the Alien franchise that I started? And he doesn't even want to make a sequel to my movie. He wants to make a sequel to James Cameron's Aliens. Who is this young whippersnapper think he is? So all of a sudden, Ridley Scott was like, breaking news, he's gonna make a sequel finally to Prometheus, after he had bomb after bomb after bomb after bomb, and he had no choice but to go back to the one franchise that he knew he was going to make money off of and people were going to go see, even though it was crap. So he wanted to stop Neil Blomkamp from making his vision. Let's take a quick look at Neil Blomkamp. Everybody knows him from his first movie, District 9. When this movie first came out, I loved it. I still love it. It was about like these insect creature aliens that like landed in South Africa. So after this film, people were so excited. They're like, wow, this guy's amazing. He's the new Spielberg. He's the new whatever. So then he came out with Elysium. And again, it was a new concept. But what happened was, people noticed that Elysium looked very similar to District 9. So people were like, it's good, but we were expecting more, and we were expecting different. And after that, he came out with Chappie. And people again were like, wow, this looks amazing. But then when they watched the film, they're like, hold on a minute. Chappie looks exactly like District 9, which looks exactly like Elysium. But instead of insects, it's robots. And instead of healthcare, it's more robots. Now the thing with Chappie was, it looked amazing, but the story sucked. And they focused on this one South African rap group, which were horrible, annoying characters, and they focused the entire movie on them. So the movie was literally a flop. People started to sour on Blumkamp. And Blumkamp is kind of like similar to Ridley Scott, I noticed, because he is a great visual director, but he cannot write a screenplay to save his life. And he loves to give his input. So again, if you just have a guy who writes a great screenplay and you hand it off to Neil Blomkamp and he just directs it visually, then it's perfect. Once Ridley Scott wanted to make more Alien movies, Neil Blomkamp kind of went on hiatus. He was forced to stop, progressing on the Alien 5 concept art, and he stopped making movies after Chappie. Neil Blomkamp had his own movie studio company where he would make short films, and I would suggest definitely taking a look at it on YouTube. His short films are visually stunning, amazing. He stinks at character development. He stinks at, good plot. You have these, lizard creatures. You have this Vietnam demonic zombie movie, more robot movies. Look at this. This is crazy. What is this? But ever since Ridley Scott put the hit out on Neil Blomkamp, I haven't seen him since. He hasn't made any new big blockbuster films. He's just making these tiny short films. And I checked it lately and I haven't seen any more films. See, he stopped making films in 2019 and they're all short films right here. Is his career dead thanks to Ridley Scott just because he wanted to make an Alien film and outshine the great iconic Ridley Scott? So if you heard any news about Neil Blomkamp, let me know. In my opinion, I don't want Ridley Scott making any more Alien movies. He should get out of the game. Ridley Scott is finished. He's washed up. All his good ideas he had in the beginning of his career. As he got older, he became more senile or more cocky because he's surrounded by yes men and no one can tell him no. And he thinks every idea he has is the greatest idea of all time. And it's not. He's a great visual director, but that's it. He hasn't gotten any better. He should stay away from Alien movies. And I don't even think Neil Blomkamp should make his Alien 5 movie. Yes, everyone got all excited about the concept art, but that was a long time ago. It's over now. Even if Blomkamp said okay, even if Ridley Scott gave him the okay to make his movie, everybody would be all excited at first and be like, finally we're gonna see Neil Blomkamp's vision come to life. And when people go and see the movie, in the first half an hour, they'll be like, wow, this is great. But then the magic's gonna wear off. And people are gonna realize, wait a minute, he just remade District 9, which is the same as Elysium, which is the same as Chappie. It's the same movie. Instead of with insects, instead of with robots, it's with xenomorphs. So Neil Blomkamp needs to back off too. The magic's over. The dream is over. I'm not even sure I want to see more Alien movies having to do with Sigourney Weaver, Ripley and Hicks and Newt, because Sigourney Weaver is old. Michael Biehn as Hicks is old. Too much time has gone by. I don't want to see an old Ripley like Sarah Connor in Terminator Dark Fate, when she's a geriatric, 9-year-old woman with a walker, and she's supposed to be believable with a bazooka that she can't even hold up, that she uses as a walker or uses as a cane to kill, to kill Terminators that are impossible to kill. But a 9-year-old, grandmother with arthritis is supposed to be menacing. Stop that. It's over. I don't want to see Sigourney Weaver in the same light. Yes, you can have Newt as the main character and, but they're gonna cast some Ruby Rose as Newt or something, or they're gonna cast Brie Olson as Newt and, have some SJW forced diversity type, film, because they can't just make good films anymore focusing on plot and character development. They have to push an agenda, some story of social justice. So I don't have confidence that they're even able to make a new Alien film. Just make a whole separate genre and call it something else. Don't even use the xenomorphs. How about, here's an interesting concept. Come up with something new. Come up with something original. Make a new alien creature. Make new characters. Make a new world. Stop looking in the past. Stop getting the same old geriatric people to rekindle some spark that happened back in the 80s or early 90s or whatever, the 70s, for God's sakes. Let me know what you think of this article, if you agree with Ridley Scott coming back to make more Alien prequels or sequels or whatever. Should they bring back an old Sigourney Weaver, an old Michael Biehn, and what direction do you want the Alien franchise to go in? Or do you want the Alien franchise to just finally die and come up with something new? Have some new screenplay writers, some new up-and-coming directors that don't want to push a far-left SJW agenda. Just focus on the story, on the characters, and you will make more money than anything out there in the past 10-20 years. How about you give that a chance? So let me know in the comments.